what are the best camera settings that you can use when setting up your camera. Today we're gonna go over all of that. We're gonna be talking about file settings, picture profiles, file size, all of that stuff. It's important for me to note that every photographer has a different way of setting up their camera and their file settings and their focus points. Everyone is different. This is just the way that I do things. I'll throw up some of my work so that you guys can see how I shoot, my style. If you like what you see, then continue to watch because I'm gonna be going over all of my settings that help me achieve photos like this. Keep in mind, there's much more to these pictures than just the file settings and size and things like that. But you know, the settings are important. First things first is the file size / image quality. Right now, I have mine set to MRAW, so that's medium raw. I'll zoom in here. And I have no JPEG selected because I don't really need JPEGs. Now, I used to shoot small raw. Believe it or not. Actually, I was shooting small raw for a while. The difference between the file size, small raw is 7.5 and then medium raw is about 17. So the file size increases as you go from small raw to medium raw to full size raw. So full size raw goes up to 30 megabytes per photo. Would I suggest shooting in full size raw? You can. I don't think it's gonna be a huge issue as long as you have enough space on your memory card. When should you shoot in JPEG and when should you shoot in RAW? I always shoot in RAW. I don't shoot JPEG at all. I personally don't recommend shooting in JPEG. The file is just very limiting. Whatever you shoot is what you get. If you're shooting in RAW, then you can make adjustments in Photoshop, Lightroom, whatever photo editor you have. You have more leverage if you overexpose or underexpose. Meaning, like let's say you take a picture that's too bright. If you shoot it in RAW, then you can adjust it so that you can like dial it down. But if you shoot that same picture in JPEG and it's too bright, you can't, there's not much you can do. Think of it like a pizza that you've already baked. Everything's kind of stuck to it. You can't do, you can peel stuff off of it, like the toppings, but it's always gonna be just a baked pizza. A raw photo is like an unbaked pizza. You can move things around. You still have a chance to take off something or fix it up, move things around. Just think of it like that, like pizza. I couldn't think of anything, I didn't know what other way to describe it. My white balance is set to auto. I never touch my white balance ever. It's always auto. It never gets changed, so I wouldn't recommend touching that. There's no reason to. I've never thought twice about white balance. And that's how some people in your life should be. You should not even think twice about them, you know? Another thing is picture style. Mine is set to standard. I've never changed it. There it is right there. Let's move on to focal points, which is extremely important. Now, if you are shooting DSLR like me, you will have to choose your focus points. If you're shooting mirrorless, you can skip over this because you don't even have to choose a focus point anymore because they are pampering everyone. It's very important for me to choose a focus point because that's what I want to do. I want to choose the focus point. I don't like my camera making decisions for me. Okay, I'm a Libra. I don't like making decisions, but I have to make decisions like this. Another important mode that I like to use is the Select AF Area Selection mode, okay? On this menu here, I have Spot Autofocus selected. That's the one that I normally use. There are options for Expand AF Area Surround, Zone AF, and then Large Zone AF, and Auto Selection AF. I find the best one, again, for me is Spot Autofocus. So basically, within my focus point is another focus point. So it's like two focus points in one, just to make sure that my photo is gonna be very sharp, very crystal clear for me. And that's the best way that I found that I can focus efficiently when I'm taking my photo, and it really gives me the best outcome. Again, this is for DSLRs. It's this grid button right here. You press it, and then it allows you to choose which one you want. And again, I chose the first one. It's called Spot Autofocus. And then when it comes to the actual focus points, like the amount of focus points, I like to do 15 points. And I feel like this is the perfect amount of focus points for me because I can choose the top of the picture, left, right pretty quickly. They have eye autofocus now and smart focus, all of that stuff. So a lot of the times you're not gonna have to worry about that. But for me, I love to choose my focus point. I use autofocus, but I manually choose the focus point. That's kind of confusing. So basically, my camera, that's really confusing actually. Okay, my lens is set to autofocus, but I manually choose the focus point. So that means my lens is the one that's focusing and finding the focus. I'm just choosing which part of the picture it's gonna focus on. So that's what I mean by the manual focus points. So if you're wondering whether or not to have your lens manual focus, I would never manual focus my lens. Like that means that you would literally have to go and do this and try to manual focus every time, and that would make me into a psychopath, and I don't want that. One thing that I would not recommend is using auto ISO, okay? And you might not agree with me. And again, I know that the more cameras come out, like the newer versions, they're gonna have more auto settings, like you don't have to even put the settings, but I think that's what's so important in creating your style as a photographer and getting pictures that look like, again, your style. I've had so many bad experiences putting my camera to auto ISO, and then I go out, I take the picture, and then it's like bright. It's as if I've taken it during a blizzard. I truly believe that to get the best pictures possible, you have to manually set things like aperture, your focus points, your ISO. It's so important because that's how you develop a style, right? Because you shoot a certain type of way. Some photographers like me, I like to underexpose my work. So if I use auto settings, that's not gonna happen because it will always have like this perfect exposure, but I don't want perfect exposure. So using auto ISO does not work for me as a photographer. I've had to fight for my life trying to take my settings off of auto ISO at times. So for me, I like to manually choose the ISO. It's the light sensitivity, and I feel like it's so important to the picture. If you are outside and your camera for some reason does like 1000 ISO, you're gonna get that grainy picture. Okay, you're gonna be so excited shooting, you're not even gonna pay attention. Okay, until you get home and you pull up that picture and then you realize your camera thought this was gonna work and it betrayed you. Don't do auto ISO, don't get used to it. I think that, again, this is just, maybe I just like the harder way of photography and I like being more involved in the process, and that's what makes me love photography so much. I like to choose every single setting for every type of lighting, and that gives me maximum control over my picture, and I love that. The next one, you may not be happy with this one, but I have to be the one to tell you guys. You have to learn manual settings. The only way, it's the only way. But let me tell you why you should learn manual settings over just selecting auto settings, okay? Not only will you learn the basics of photography, which is extremely important, but also you will have more control over how your photo turns out. And this will help you in developing your style as a photographer. I like to shoot more underexposed. I like to expose for the details. That means going down a stop. That means adjusting my f-stop. And so I wouldn't know how to do that if I didn't use manual settings. It can be very intimidating to learn manual settings. I think once you get that, you're gonna be good and you're gonna finally feel like you've accomplished something so great. When I first started photography, I only used auto settings and I only shot in JPEG, just so you guys know. I did that for 2 years, probably. And everything was going well. I was like, photography is easy, please. And then I upgraded my camera to the 5D Mark II. It was a professional grade camera. It was the first professional camera that I actually bought. And I scheduled a photo shoot. I had a model there and everything. And it was my first time using the camera, my professional camera. So I went to change the dial to aperture priority, like auto settings. And it wasn't there. There was no auto settings on that camera. It was just I was either using manual or I wasn't using anything. I feel like being forced into it was the only option for me, because otherwise maybe I wouldn't have been compelled to learn manual settings, because I depended on auto settings so much, and that was easy for me and that just did the job. But I would have lost out on so many amazing pictures and the full process of photography had I not learned manual settings. My recommendation is to just go out there and shoot. Try to get a basic understanding of what each thing does, but at the end of the day, just go out and shoot. At least for me, I'm more of like a visual learner. So I just went out there and start taking pictures, and I would just change my settings. I just practiced, and I just failed a lot. And only then did I fully understand how to use manual settings. And my pictures have only gotten better from there. Don't depend on auto settings to do all the work for you, because sometimes your camera doesn't really know the best settings for you in that situation. Again, maybe you're more of an intentional photographer and you like to overexpose because you like brighter pictures, or maybe you like to underexpose. Again, your camera's not gonna know that. It's a camera, okay? It doesn't have thoughts or feelings. You do, and maybe you have too many of them, like me. So what I would say is don't worry too much about the technicalities of, like, if your shutter speed is 1/10 of this, then your f-stop has to be this. Literally, who cares? Just go out there. If the picture is looking good and your ISO is not 17,000, I think you're good, okay? Keep the ISO low. Try to keep it fairly low if you're shooting in the bright sunlight, okay? And I think you'll be okay. Just don't focus too much on technicalities. And again, that's just me as a photographer, how I learned and what I like to do. I don't like to get wrapped up in mathematics and numbers, and if it's this, then it has to be this. I just do whatever I want, to be honest with you. And that's why I'm reckless on here. And that's why people leave me comments like, this girl doesn't know what she's talking about. But my pictures are cute, and the agencies like them. So what are you mad for? What are you mad for? It's so important for me to stress the fact that despite having all these settings, you still have to work with lighting, composition, get, the settings, manual settings. All of this is what helps you get a good photo, not just your camera settings. So don't think just because you change the picture profile to standard that your pictures are gonna be better. It's not. You gotta learn to use those all together to get a good shot. So I hope that this gives you a good insight as to how I set up my camera. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video.